Hello, my name is Morgan and welcome to episode 1 of our brand new Derailed trail series. In this series we're going to basically do a podcast, but we're going to cycle up a hill and then I'm going to try and keep up with a bunch of professional riders as we come down. This first episode is with Contour Collective co-founder Chris Hutchens. We were going to just do it as a pilot, but we thought it was good enough just to release. So I hope you enjoy it. It's me trying to keep up with Hutch down one of the trails here at Innerleithen. We chat about the history of Innerleithen, Hutch's first time at this place, which was quite a long time ago. Now, sorry Hutch, it was like 2001, so he's been here almost since the very beginning. We chat about that, a bunch of other things. I can't really remember now. It was a few weeks ago, so I think you're going to enjoy it. I really enjoyed talking to Hutch. I really enjoyed going for the ride with him. We had a fun time coming down. It's a test, so let us know what you think. Hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching. Nice.
Class.
Hutch.
Morgybear.
This is exciting actually making this happen. I can't believe this is all, it's just possible to record. This is cool.
Let's hope it works. This is a bit different.
Tell us about first time you came to where we are today in Innerleithen.
Innerleithen, well, probably came down around 2000, 2001 and yeah, would have just come down for just riding and then quickly started doing all those winter series races. So
those were gnarly.
They were mint. We'd come down with like Ben and Andy Phillips, James Phillips, Mum and Dad would come down and yeah, just started like, it was when the Red Bull lorries, 4x4s were doing the uplifts.
Yeah, Red Bull.
So yeah, they did this like 4-up race, which I remember, and that was just awesome. Like all the big names were there. Like Petey was on his, was he GT or yeah, I think it was back then. But I just remember those being really. And
you were just a young juvenile, just taking it all in.
Yeah, I was like 10, 11. And this was like the place to be. You had like the national races coming here, and yeah, it's just super inspiring.
Do you remember much of like, I mean, because in those days, and even when I started racing, downhill was, in some ways, like the participation of downhill was so much bigger.
Oh, it's huge.
It was huge back then. Like that was what everyone did. And like, but my knowledge of like the 90s, especially like the 90s UK scene, is almost like I don't know anything about that. Do you remember much about 90s racing in the UK?
Only like anecdotally from mates. I've just got a stick. Oh. And yeah, I think the 90s stuff was all the racing.
It's like golf,
which happened. Well, it all happened at Golfy. So yeah. I remember hearing from like Steve Dees, and then yeah, loads of the guys that kind of got into the racing in the 90s. Like you'd hear about the stories from those guys.
Yeah, yeah.
I put together this video 2 years ago now with Tommy Wilkinson and found some really cool old footage of the racing from then.
That's sick.
And that was cool to look back on.
I'd love to see that. Is that online?
Yeah, it's something I did with No Fuss and the Scottish Enduro Series guys.
So it was
to promote the Continental Series, and there was a little teaser in there about the EWS coming back to the Tweed Valley. So
sick.
There was sort of things happening back 2 years ago to get it back into the valley.
So when you first came here, were a lot of these, they just built a lot of these trails?
Yeah, so there was like the 39 steps was the trail I remember, which I think Emma Guy had a real bad crash on one of the bus stops, and yeah, that was the main sort of trail.
Yeah.
Which was a full-on downhill track.
What was your experience? How scary was that first race for you? The first downhill race?
First one here.
Yeah, or just was that one of your first downhill races here? Or?
Not the national, no. It would have started off with the Pro Bike Sport Winter Series.
Just started in the winter.
And
what was that like? My first,
mad.
I think it was my first winter series here. I just remember it was, everything just got, like, people were just breaking everywhere obviously, so, and the cold just iced everything over to this like
Was that one of the early winter series? Right.
I don't know. Yeah, it was. I can't remember which one. I think it was one of the last ones.
They do 3 every winter, which
yeah, exactly.
They were so good. But I remember coming down with a caravan, my parents, and then in the morning having to like heat up my derailleur to defrost the gears, and then going up and coming out of the hut, and there was like the long straight which is still there, and that whole thing had gone to sheet ice, but we just cracked on anyway.
It's kind of a stupid idea having a downhill race in the winter.
A little bit, yeah.
I remember just just crashing a bunch. I eventually couldn't race. I hurt my wrist. I don't know if I broke it or not. Just like just breaking where I shouldn't have on this like bit of sheet ice.
Yeah, it was some good days though, racing those winter series runs.
Yeah, they were good fun.
I guess, yeah, there's just been more and more trails at Innerleithen, and it's a place to be. So
it really
it's
is.
Like such a great spot in Scotland, and yeah, good to come back. And
it's crazy as well how much riding all over the place, especially so perhaps in the Tweed Valley, has changed since, you know, like downhill bikes being the sort of main. I mean, I suppose downhill and cross country, so there was like, it was kind of more clean cut in some ways.
Yeah, there's a definite like
the interest was cross country. Over here was downhill, and there wasn't, or was there as much sort of natural trails or people building trails like as there is now?
Not as much as there is now. There was definitely, I think, underground trail building going on at all times. But then the volume of trails that there are now, and obviously it's gone a little bit more above board. So
it's
Tweed Valley Trail Association, like, really doing some awesome stuff, and I think it's probably smoothed relationships a bit. Just the sport's got a bit more professional. So.
Totally, yeah. There's kind of been a meeting of like, now it's like somewhere in between, you know, proper trail companies coming and building the trails. It's like there's authorised kind of participation of locals to build trails on their own.
But that works really well, because like, trails kind of come and go, and I think that model, certainly when I was involved in the Aberdeen stuff, there was the sort of idea of trails evolve and change, and actually putting in hand-built, sort of hand-built trails.
Yeah.
You maybe put that in for a bit, and then, you know, why not just get rid of that and build something new?
Totally, yeah.
And fresh, and then keep it interesting.
And those are oftentimes the funnest trails to ride.
Yeah.
And they just get built without, you know, I guess like here they've been need to. It's like this chairlift project here. They go on for years, like planning and investment, and it's probably the same for these trails. Whereas having just sort of meeting of like locals willing to build trails, and then actually doing that sort of professionally.
Yeah, we probably just went out of shot there.
Having locals willing to build trails and kind of allowing them to do that in a safe and authorised way.
Yeah,
is a great kind of compromise.
There's so many people doing in their local areas doing different bits for the sport.
Yeah.
There's some real committed trail builders out there.
Absolutely,
they go out with their head torch, and can't thank them enough for like the amazing tracks they put in. And, like, then we end up racing them, but hopefully they get stoked on putting trails in that people enjoy racing. Yeah,
it's amazing actually at the sort of even at like the highest level of racing, like World Cup downhill, enduro racing, the actual trails that we're riding oftentimes, like that World Cup in Croatia and Losange, is just like trails that people who live there have built.
Yeah.
And then they end up a lot of times, same with the EWS series here, being like the trails that all the best riders in the world are competing on. That's quite nuts actually, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Tree, this was
continue
covered
the
in
chat.
snow
I'll
last
let you
time.
go first. Was it?
Yeah. It's so much easier, man. Absolutely love not riding up in the snow.
Yeah, but I guess the good thing is, like, there's, especially Tweed Valley or some of the bike parks, like Bike Park Wales, a new rider can go and start on a blue.
Yeah.
But it's as much fun for a faster rider, because you can just be a bit more creative sometimes.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
You can have fun on a whole range of trails, no matter what ability you are.
Totally, yeah. And that's it's an important point, because the kind of trails that we're talking about are, like, it's hard to just cut in a trail to a hill that's for a beginner. You know, like, it takes a lot. It does take the infrastructure and the kind of money and stuff to actually put like hardcore down. And
yeah, there's a lot of chat about putting more sort of greens and blues around the place, and actually to get that funnel of rider into mountain biking.
Yeah,
that's really important, because it's super intimidating going up and you see like a trail in the woods. There's no way you're going to ride that first time.
Totally,
so
man.
yeah, going to these sort of more like friendly hubs is cool. And,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, there's more and more popping up.
Yeah, when I first came here, I remember thinking like these were the trails that I was dreaming of riding.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually know anything about them. I just assumed they were all super gnarly downhill trails. I didn't know about the Cadden Bank and stuff. And yeah, it's not something, you know, you can just jump straight into, like downhill trails and shit, obviously.
No, exactly. Like that was, remember racing those ones and Access Cups and like, the hard, fast trails, and it was like super competitive. But yeah, anyone can get down them. It's just quite cool.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favourite racing memory from Innerleithen?
Favourite racing memory?
How many times did you race here? I mean, you must have raced here an absolute bunch.
Like 1 or 2 times every year.
Yeah.
My favourite one was probably Scottish Enduro Series, like 4 years ago now, and it was a brutal race. And while the downhill racing was so good,
yeah.
And there was one downhill race where all the pros came to before the World Cup. You know, Nathan Rennie was there and Chris Kavarik and stuff.
What year would this
that
be?
was cool.
Chris Kavarik.
2005?
Ah, 2005, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that was pretty cool.
That is easily my favourite.
But the
yeah.
Scottish Enduro Series run,
yeah,
just from the day out on the bike, it was like a 2,000 metre day.
Yeah.
And we were out from, I think the elites left at like 11 when they didn't get back until 6. It was a massive day.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just loved that like huge day, physical challenging. We did 5 or 6 stages. People were absolutely hooked by then. But it was
that's the one
just
for the
a good day out
memories.
on the bike, had amazing trails.
How do you
Yeah, good.
do you prefer racing enduro to downhill then?
I do now, yeah.
What was the switch like for you? Because I know for me, like one of the reasons, to be honest, that I don't or haven't at least raced over the last, like since I started racing downhill, was just like everyone stopped riding downhill and racing downhill.
Yeah.
So these are the bikes we're all using, and like enduro just wasn't the same. Just didn't get the same excitement or like buzz from racing enduro as I did from downhill. What was that switch like for you?
It was kind of gradual, and I guess I started to struggle more to do as well as I wanted to at the World Cups, and I was juggling uni at the same time, and it largely came down to money, financing it, and the time, and I was just out riding my mountain bike and like the Pentlands, and then when I moved up to Aberdeen, just like in the local hills, and I was just not really getting the same buzz for downhill. Like I wanted to go out and ride with my mates and not just push up all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that naturally came as I kind of got more into like the outdoors and the adventure side.
Yeah.
And then getting deeper into like the valleys and the like northwest and like Torridon, and like I just started to enjoy the outdoors in a different way.
Totally. It's interesting actually, because the last year I was kind of seriously racing was 2014, and then it was weird because I was like, why do I not give a shit anymore? And then I thought like, oh, I probably will give a shit like once the season starts.
Yeah.
And then I was still doing bits and pieces of racing, but went to Whistler for a month, and I thought like, I was like, I'm gonna go to Whistler and get all this like downhill practice in, and then I'm gonna start training again. I'm gonna come back 2016, like I know I'll be fresh again for it. And instead I went there, and it's like, I mean, British Columbia, like where it's the fucking coolest place in the world.
Amazing, isn't it?
And you're looking at all these like amazing mountains, just like breathtaking place to be. And we only brought downhill bikes.
Yep.
And like, it was like similar, exactly the same as you. Like my favourite memories of that trip are just running. I went on some epic days, just running around, you know, the Rockies.
Finding new places.
Exactly, and downhill was just like, it's fun. And like I did a race there, and the race was cool because it's engaging. But just you are right. Like the training for downhill was the thing that you're just on you're so restrained, you know, compared with like we're there on these downhill bikes, and we can just go up on these big sofas and ride these like perfectly, you know, curated trails. And it just felt like it wasn't what I was into anymore.
Oh, exactly. Crystal, I might need to just wipe the lens and the camera. It just popped there. But that should be fine. Cool. Yeah, I certainly found as, I don't know, working 9 till 5, like doing a 37, 40 hour week or whatever, actually, I didn't have time to like split between downhill and enduro.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really practice the downhill, whereas when I was at uni, I could be a bit more flexible.
Totally.
So it was just, yeah, when you're time restrained, you kind of like go to one bike, and then that was the bike I wanted to race, because I wanted to still race at the weekends.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it was just all came at the right time, which was kind of cool.
That is the thing with enduros. It's so much. I guess that's why it's overtaken downhill as a participation sport. It's like this is what we're doing for fun anyway, and this is kind of training for enduro. And you only need to have one bike, whereas with downhill you need the 2 bikes.
But then will e-bikes now take over from the participation sport?
Yeah, that's a really big...
yeah, there was a really good article. Was it Pink Bike, I think?
Yeah, it was.
Which you might have shared actually, where it was talking. Was it Paul Aston maybe wrote it?
It was. He's a I can't remember the guy. I think it was Paul something, but
yeah. And he's got he rides an e-bike out in Italy, and more and more people, if they're time restrained, the e-bike's perfect for them.
Yeah.
So will that get more people out on bikes? Be interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, that article is so fascinating thinking about, and I never thought about it before. Like he was saying, e-bikes are outselling pedal bikes
in Europe. Yeah.
In Europe, yeah.
I know. I was surprised by that. I've not seen this actual stats.
I don't know. I just read they're outselling e-bikes. I don't know where exactly, but he was talking about how that will change racing as well, and like possibly. It's very interesting thinking about like the bikes. These are the bikes people are using right now.
Yeah.
And that has affected downhill racing massively.
Totally, yeah.
But in some ways, it's made like the very top of the sport grow.
Yep.
But the participation sport now is enduro like racing.
Enduro, whether that's e-bike or analog.
Yeah.
Digital or analog now. So.
Exactly. What's your thoughts on? Well, in fact, maybe a little bit less interesting to ask what your current thoughts are on e-bikes, but what were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts
when e-bikes first came out.
I was interested to see what they were like, and I think like technology has evolved. I was a bit reluctant to even consider them as an option.
Yeah.
I kind of saw them as a bit lazy. Like, why would you not? You know, they were heavy, and they were heavy and kind of cumbersome, but they've really refined, and I think they open the door to so many different people. So, you know, if you've got knee issues, or maybe you're just like not keeping up with your mates and they're on like analog bikes, or they get an e-bike, so you have to get an e-bike.
Yeah.
So I've kind of opened up to the idea, and I think they can be great to get into the sport. Makes the climbs much easier, and then you still get the descents.
Totally.
And if you're time restrained and your like focus isn't just fitness, it's actually, you know, getting the downhill runs, and that's great. And then I think from a training tool, there's a lot of top end riders using them, just, you know, on their recovery days. They're still getting descents, and that's great. And actually listen to Downtime podcast with Ollie Morris and Ben Plenjohn, that actually opened my kind of eyes to like different perspectives, and they cover like some really interesting topics. So I'm not going to repeat it. Go and listen to their podcast. That was really interesting, and I think they're great generally.
Yeah, I'm coming around to that view. My initial thoughts were very much like, these are clearly for you know, people that have no business. I mean, aside from like, obviously some people like have like a disability or a handicap where like an e-bike opens up a sport that they used to love or whatever, but aside from that, like my initial thoughts were just like, well, you know, no, like take yourself to the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Like I'm not for this, but I think that was ignorant in many ways, because I think one of the big barriers for people, like skiing is a sport that anyone can enjoy pretty much, you know, and like everyone goes to, like everyone has fun with it, you know, like your mum, your mum's friend, you know, it's not like mountain biking's a bit
unless
more
you're getting into it, and then sometimes it's like chaos. I got some great videos of my old flatmates at Glencoe just struggling.
I remember the first time I took a friend of me and Krista's Cammy, we took him up Hill End. I think I might have actually saw you that day. in your yellow.
Oh, the yellow
Transporter.
van.
It was like
Yeah,
back in like
TCJ
2010,
one.
2011 when we had all that snow.
Yep.
Took a couple of my friends up there, first time skiing, and like they're good mountain bikers and stuff. So I was like, right, we teach them the snow plow, and then like popped up on the left, got them to the top, and then just kind of let them go free.
It's quite steep at the top of Hill End.
Oh my
as well.
god, Cammy just went fucking flying and could not stop.
There was snow at least.
Yeah, there was loads of snow.
Yeah,
snow
so it wasn't
all the
just
way up,
the hexagonal like triangular.
Yeah, I was like, crash, like just you're gonna have to like
stop.
Yeah, exactly. And then
I think my
like,
friend decided that the best way to stop skiing was to go into a fence.
Yeah.
And just like ride up the bank and going cool, which is funny.
But the thing about skiing is it's a lot of people do it. And that's partly because they create these resorts and super easy, accessible to people. But I think it has, in some ways, there's a thing to it with skiing, or what I liked about mountain biking, sports like mountain biking, climbing, running, is like it feels more sustainable and you're enjoying the environment in a way that I feel like more connected with it.
Yeah, you're just like a number getting up and down on ski resort.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just like, there's a bit of a...
You're in Disneyland, you know? And I suppose thought e-bikes were going to be, was a bit of that in mountain biking, but I actually don't think they are. I think they
still got to work for it. Right?
Exactly.
There's still a good fitness element.
There was a study as well came out that showed them like
almost better, aren't they?
Yeah, like your heart rate. Like for people who don't exercise, if an e-bike's going to encourage them,
it's great
to get out, then it's great because they're still doing a lot of exercise.
Yeah, you'll need an e-bike soon for these as well.
I might do, yeah.
I have sort of seen a different crowd coming in with e-bikes, and there's definitely like different groups of people, and like it's great to see, and there's more and more people getting involved. I think Bike Park Wales is really interesting because there's a huge like uproar at them charging more for e-bikes.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, you've got like more runs getting done by the e-bikes, more erosion and maintenance, and it was like £4 or £5 more, I think, which it's not a huge amount of money, but extra. But I can kind of see why they were maybe a bit annoyed at that. But it didn't stop, people still turned up.
Yeah,
so it
that's
happened,
the thing.
and then people are still paying. So.
It's interesting talking to, even for me now, like you've been in the sport for 20 years now, like racing, and even for me, it's like, it's a while now, it's like 14, 15 years, and like when you're first getting started for the first sort of 5-10 years, like the sport just is what it is, do you know what I mean? It's kind of fixed, and then it's a bit like, going up in a plane and you start to see like the horizon. As you've been in it for longer, you can see like, oh wait, like this sport's actually changed quite a bit, since like I started. Like things are very different.
It has done.
How is it, like what do you think some of the biggest, maybe aside from enduro bikes, which is kind of the obvious ones, what do you think have been some of the biggest changes in mountain biking?
Biggest changes
that you've seen in your 20 years in the sport?
So many options of wheel sizes. It's quite confusing.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think actually one of the changes is for someone coming new into the sport, it's a minefield out there. It's so confusing. There's standards for everything, and that's really hard to navigate. It's clear. Yeah, so I guess that's one thing that's changed is more and more standards and options.
Yeah, that's true.
And that can be difficult for a newcomer into the sport. And there's a lot of marketing jargon out there.
Totally.
And that can be quite difficult to understand. But the bikes have progressed massively. And obviously I don't want to touch on the enduro stuff too much.
Well, I mean, that's one of the, it's like, the biggest, so I don't want to just take it away from you.
Dropper post,
yeah.
That's made a big difference. That's just, I think, makes the ride more enjoyable.
Absolutely. It's, it's surprising to, dropper post was one as well that you wouldn't think, like I remember I didn't have one for ages. And then we got solids and stuff and it came with dropper posts and I was like, wow, this is so much better.
Yeah.
Like it's like one of this, it seems so simple, and it seems so like, is that big a deal? Like, how do you use an Allen key?
Yeah, exactly.
Just makes it so much more flow in the ride.
Yeah, it does just open up the options. And then I was going to talk about mud guards, because I remember cutting up Coke bottles, zip tying them to forks when I was like 12, and even the top riders were doing ridiculous stuff. And then there was like flaps between the crown and the fork. There was like the small ones, and then still zip tied options, Velcro options, and now finally like fork manufacturers are putting bolts on the back of the crowns.
Yeah.
So like obviously the Mud Hugger Evo now bolts straight onto the fork, and why it's taken 20 years,
it's bizarre,
mind-blowing.
yeah.
But like, it's good that I know that's like just a small thing, but like there's all these like little innovations that come along. What other big thing? I think generally like the number of riding spots has really like increased massively, and actually there's, I think more so in England, but there's loads of private little bike parks. So you've got Black Mountain Cycles, 417, there's like Oakford Bike Park, and there's some on the East Coast, where actually people are happy to go and pay an entry. You've got Windhill, stuff like this. Obviously with the access rights in Scotland, it's totally different. Like, there's no real pay to use.
Yeah.
The DH Farm, which is great, up in Aberdeenshire. And then there's places like encouraging people to just like donate and pay. And I think giving back is actually quite important.
Totally, yeah.
So like, yeah, every year I give some cash to Gravitate up in Aberdeen for all their trail building like initiatives. So just like supporting those groups is quite important, whether you're in them or if you don't have time, maybe trying to put like the odd 10 quid here and there when you're riding.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's good. Right? And I think, yeah, just the organisations in the industry, like at a rider levels, growing, and like that's cool to see.
Yeah.
More so in Scotland, for sure.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think there's been a, like, obviously we're seeing huge sort of acceleration of the growth in cycling last year with coronavirus and
COVID
and restrictions and everything. How much bigger do you think, if at all, well, we know it is, I suppose, so how much bigger I think the sport of mountain biking is now, like when you started?
It's really hard to know. You've got, I guess a good measure is sort of the big Ardrock events in Nottingham, Northumbrian.
Yeah.
And like you're getting 1,000, 4,000 people turning up at events, and then you look at sort of trail counts, and they have increased. And you know, there was something online that was showing that can't remember which trail centre, but literally the numbers had doubled from like 10 years ago, I think. So there's obvious growth. It's like it has exploded. There's more and more folk out there.
Yeah.
Whether there's not necessarily any more racing, but like just the base of participants is like getting bigger and bigger, which is cool.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. It's like just around like my parents' house in Edinburgh when I was at school. Definitely felt like me, Crystal, some of the other guys were like the only people really doing it, the only people using up the woods, and we had a few other spots everywhere that we've been using a lot recently because of travel restrictions. But now, like, I'm just seeing, like, it's amazing as well, getting to that age when it's so heartwarming to see like yourself and these young kids who are just out sketching around on their bikes, and like, you know, like they love it, and they're at an age where I know it was so amazing for us to have this like escape from our parents' houses and thrill to do that wasn't like all the other thrills you can seek as a teenager. And it's just so amazing to see there's definitely a lot more young kids I'm seeing like out.
Yeah, there is loads more. But also it's been really interesting. So there's a few girls at uni I was with, and in the last couple of years they've been not getting into mountain biking as such, but road riding. And you know, one of my friends has got a road bike, indoor trainer, and she's doing Zwift.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect her to get into biking, and I've never like really encouraged it, and maybe I should have done, but you know, we don't see each other all that much. But amazing that she's found this love of like cycling, and like she's really positive about it. And like that's just so awesome to see, and maybe she'll take that and then take that onto the road, go mountain biking eventually. So
totally,
there's that sort of progression, which will be cool to see.
Absolutely. It's, how do you feel about, like, I was running up in Pentland Hills, which sort of local hills to Edinburgh, like a couple weeks ago, and I went up. I quite often go up there like just before it gets dark.
Yeah.
And usually, years gone by, it's only ever been me. Like,
Is it?
It's there.
Out running,
yeah. Like as the sun's setting and stuff. So it's always been this like really kind of intimate, like just sort of like I had some fucking cool runs up as the sun's setting in Pentland.
That's amazing up there.
Anyway, I was out there the other day, and there's like car park is filled, packed, so many walkers, and there was like 4 or 5 runners. So usually the walkers just think you're a weirdo.
Oh,
so
running
around the hills. But this time, I just never. It's like, it's just so weird seeing so many people, and there's always this kind of like, you know, on the one hand, obviously, we definitely want to get more people out doing those things that we know are so amazing.
It's so good for you, aren't they?
And on the other hand, you got to like fight this kind of little like niggling feeling that like no, this was like
you want it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. This is mine. You're like taking my intimacy with this place.
Yeah, but
like,
and then there's like lots more folk around.
Exactly, yeah. And we're seeing it a lot with like my brother lives in Oban, and like so many people have been travelling around the UK.
Yep.
And like locals in these places are, you know, he was talking about all his friends and they're just complaining about all these people, and he's like, man, you guys just gotta learn to share. Like this is a good thing.
Yeah. And I think that's great. There's going to be more local tourism travel in the UK, and I think areas need to try and capitalise that, you know, welcome guests and visitors in, and then guests and visitors go into these places, I think need to respect them, you know, take the rubbish away, support groups, and you know, pay your parking, stuff like that, and just try and help the sort of facilities and the infrastructure in these places as well.
Totally.
You know, footpaths and stuff like that into the hills come with quite an effort to build, and it's impressive to see. So I think it's sort of a two-way thing. It has to work in unison to.
That's it, yeah.
Like, for people to enjoy it, and then you know, people to welcome in others into the areas.
Exactly, yeah. And that's kind of an education, I guess. I mean, traditionally people, I mean, I guess it's even more so if you were to go back to like the 50s or the 60s, like, you know, people, it would just be a very niche thing to do, to, you know, go climb.
Yeah, like walking was sort of a smaller group would do it, and it was a real hardcore people, and now it's becoming more of a sort of mass participation thing, getting out into the hills, walking, and it's fashionable. I think Instagram's probably pushed that, and you know, you got to have a look back photo and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
That's amazing. The more and more people getting out there.
And then the challenge is just with all these new people. You know, traditionally the people enjoying the outdoors have been people who, much smaller group, who really kind of understand them.
They know it, yeah.
Understand the rules, and probably lived in the countryside and stuff as well.
They're kind of aware of how to handle themselves in the hills, and like interested in doing my mountain leader the last year or two, and going through that qualification and course, speaking with the trainers and mountain rescue, and they're obviously seeing more incidents in the mountains because people are going out unprepared and not knowing how to look after themselves, and just not being able to make the decisions that they need to. I was in that Snowdonia last November doing my mountain leader assessment, and I'd done a pre-walk, and this couple stopped me, had their coffees and they had their phone, and they were like, do you know where the pig track is? We're trying to go up a ridge. And I was like, well, you're in the Ogwen Valley, you're in the wrong place, you're on the wrong hill. And they're like, oh, we're just following these text directions my mate sent me. I was like, oh, do you know, like, have you got a map? And they're like, no, just this text. it just blew my mind that someone was comfortable enough, and it was a beautiful day.
Yeah.
So, you know, the risk was super low. There was loads of people about, but it was still just really interesting to see new people in the national park, you know, enjoying it, but also if the weather had come in and they were up on this ridge, it could have got dangerous.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's just like trying to encourage people to prepare and have some basic understanding of, you know, navigation, reading a map, looking at a 6-figure grid reference, you know, if they do get into trouble, and just knowing the way to approach things like that.
Absolutely. And one of the best resources in terms of people learning that kind of stuff, and another thing that's changed our sport massively, is things like social media, YouTube, Instagram.
It's sexy now, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
So,
yeah. Let's go straight into it.
Which is an absolute belter of a trail.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Let's get right.
Yes!
Yeah, all right.
Yes! I love this bike! Maybe I should have put some goggles on.
White cameras.
I'm going to just chill out a second. They've done a nice bit of work to this. Yes! That was sick!
I'll give you a high five. We're not allowed to. Yes, bye.
Woo, air 5! I'm not sure how much we can see of that. Welcome to the outro of the Derailed Trail Series, Episode 1. In this outro, I'm going to do much the same sort of thing I do in our podcast series, which if you haven't watched, you should also watch. Nothing particularly negative to say about Crystal today. Leithen, you got anything? I'd say a little bit annoying on the climb. He went a little bit fast. I'll explain that in the next intro, but nothing too big to report on Crystal. I really hope you enjoyed that very first episode of our Derailed Trail Series with Hutch. Thanks for bearing with us for the pilot. We were kind of just testing the kit and stuff, but we thought it went pretty well, actually, better than we thought, so we just thought we would release it. If you did like the episode, please like, comment, and especially subscribe. We really do want you to subscribe, especially now that we're actually here in the trails. We really want you to subscribe now. So if you could comment. We've not actually been getting enough comments. I had to get my girlfriend to comment on a YouTube video the other day. And I want more people other than my girlfriend, people other than Hutch and Hutch's dad. We want to go beyond those people. We want you here listening to comment and subscribe. We know there's lots of you watching. 500, the Catherine's one's on 700 views, 11 comments. Let's try and get that up, and the subscriptions. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Thank you.